What's going on, creative family? It's Dustin Valkema. Guys, welcome to the Q&A. So we hit 2K subs a while ago and you guys have been freaking fantastic. I've sat here and I've recorded and I've recorded and I've recorded and I've tried to get this thing perfect, and I'm just gonna let it free flow for the most part. I'm just gonna let this video go quite a bit longer than I might generally look to, and that's because we're talking about some stuff here that I'm not completely comfortable with, and I need to try to push myself to be okay with that. So I'm just gonna let it go. Might jump around a little bit, but we'll always come back full circle and get to the topic. So yeah, guys, cheesy logo intro is about to go. Like, comment, subscribe. I will see you guys on me. Question 1, do you draw or do any other traditional forms of art? The answer to that one is no, not currently. I don't really do any traditional art anymore. It used to be like a big outlet for me, I guess, when I was younger, just stress and things of that nature, but it's not something for me that is that way. I feel like I've been off of the drawing game for so long that it's very hard for me to pick up a pencil and a sketchbook and get to town. So answer for that is no, not currently. Next question. Ernesto Rodriguez asked, will you ever do a one-on-one or training program or a workshop? I feel you have an amazing talent and your work is super clean always. I will love to learn more from you. Ernesto, I freaking love you, man. I appreciate the kind words. So to answer your question, yes, I do offer one-on-one training sessions. I don't currently do any, say, like on location workshops or, host any of my personal workshops for like a day or a weekend workshop. We'll be getting into that. I had started making plans for a workshop this year, and then COVID-19 hit, and so it's kind of thrown a lot of kinks here. So I'm just kind of adapting and, rolling with the punches right now, just like everybody else is. And so in the midst of a scramble, I don't have a clear answer of when my workshops will be available, but I'm sure that I'll let everybody know once we start to get that ball rolling officially. So thanks for that question, man. I appreciate your kind words. So yeah, moving along. So Jim Beard asks here, what is your backstory? What brought you to art? And there's another part of that about loving you guys and whether it's platonic or not. That's kind of weird. So strictly platonic. Love you guys. Just know that. But Jim, I've known you for a while, man. I appreciate you asking this question because it's something that I normally wouldn't just bring up. I don't really talk about my past too much. It's one of those things for me that I just kind of leave out of a lot of conversations I have. So for those who don't know, I am adopted. I have never met my birth father, and I grew up, the first 10 years of my life was kind of in and out of the system, being pushed and pulled, with my birth mother in foster homes, back and forth. Had a rough childhood. I'll talk probably more about myself. So if you hear me leave like my family specifically out of this, it's just, I don't want to get too deep into everything. But I struggled a lot as a kid. I struggled with commitment. I struggled with, anger and trust. And a lot of that stuff it played an instrumental part in who I am today and the tenacity that I may bring to the table with certain things, or having such a hard head. I've got a big head anyways, just naturally, but it's, having a little bit more of the stubborn nature that I have today. A lot of that comes from, my backstory and my past. And so 10th birthday, I was adopted. The first few years of the adoption, into my early teens, it was rough. We'd constantly butt heads. I thought I knew better. I lived a life where I had to be the young man, and I was constantly having to adapt to situations back and forth, with a new family here and a new school here, and lose my friends here and gain new people, and it jumbles a lot around. So then when you finally have a family that chooses you from the crane machine. You know, all I can remember is just like, I see in the back of my head, it's like Toy Story, all the little baby aliens, and, you know, my brother and I got picked, you know. So it's, you know, when you're finally chosen, you're having to deal with like a spaghetti ball of emotions that's just, you know, everything's kind of happening, and the life that you lived before isn't like the life that you're having to live now. But it's very hard to adapt, especially as a younger adoptee. It's hard to adjust your ways. So long story short here, ended up leaving my adopted family, just moving out of the house. Earlier on, I believe I was 17 maybe with that, and I joined the military while I was still in high school, went to basic training, came back, graduated, and then was then reserved there. In our senior year, my girlfriend, now wife, had gotten pregnant with our first son, and that was just prior to our deployment. It was about 3 months prior that we found out she was pregnant. So in a nutshell, I get deployed in, I believe it, January 2008. About 6 months into my deployment, I'm able to take my 2-week leave. My son's going to be born. I come home, boots on ground. 12 hours later, her water breaks. She's going into labor. Come out of the hospital with a son. And I've got no idea what the hell I'm doing. 2 weeks later, I head out, and my time overseas is where I really started to dabble. So when we were off mission or off shift, I would go and dabble in Photoshop. I would dabble in 3D. So I started off in 3ds Max. It's kind of where I started learning certain things in the 3D world. And so this was, you know, early 2008 that I'm really starting to play with this stuff. And that's where I really got into starting to develop a passion. For me at the time, I think it was a little bit more of not really a time filler, but when I look back on it, like that was just the first bits of raw passion where I was just able to play. I didn't have to worry about clients or feedback or dealing with any of this stuff. It was just true, like the what do they call it? The puppy love phase of being an artist. I'm just able to learn it. Anyways, coming back from the deployment. So when I got home in 2009, I've got a baby there that's 6.5 months old, and I have no idea what I'm doing. So my wife at the time was living with her parents. I was living in apartments that I had previous to the deployment for whatever reasons. I mean, I know the reasons, but we won't get into all that. You know, I ended up homeless. It was a crazy off-course adventure that I did not expect at the time. So there was a period of time there between 2009 and 2011 that I was homeless. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I knew that I enjoyed the art and 3D stuff that I had started playing with. So my uncle at the time was like, "Hey man, I never got you a graduation gift. What do you want? What do you want to do? You're back, you know, from your deployment." And, you know, he ended up hooking me up and buying me my first decent computer. It was an iMac at the time, and really just wanted to, you know, help me out in this situation. You know, I don't think he definitely didn't know the scope of the situation at the time, or, you know, being homeless or any of that stuff that came shortly after this. But he's like, "Hey, I want to help you out. Here's a computer." I was like, cool. At that point, I had zero excuses. I had no excuses. I had Photoshop, because that was packaged with the computer. I had, really everything that I needed, and that completely started the entire grind. I had no excuses. All my excuses were up. If I said, hey, I wanted to be an artist, I got all the tools that I need to be an artist, so it's time to fly. Like, you either do it or you don't. You sink or you swim, no excuses. You got the tools you need. So I went for it. All I had was my computer and a duffel bag full of clothes. That's all that I was really able to take with me. And so for a while I would couch hop here and there with buddies. Like, huge thanks to anybody that helped me out in that time of my life. It was kind of crazy, and just know that I appreciate it. So now, I'm getting to a point here where, there were times that were, I was sleeping in an MMA gym that I used to fight at, and where I really ended up, one of the biggest phases of all this was there was a pool hall in Holland where I live, and I had paid the owner of the pool hall a couple $100, a month to be able to rent this small room on the top, up in the pool hall area, and I just needed some space that I could rent for like a photography booth and my computer and whatever. But nobody ever knew that I lived up there. So it's the craziest thing, because at this point I'm still homeless. Nobody knew, except for select people, that that's where I was staying. I went to the gym. I had a gym membership, went to the gym every day, showered, did this and that, whatever. But I had my photo studio set up, very cheap at the time. I used to deal with audio engineering, post-production, obviously, in Photoshop, stuff like that, getting into photography, some cinematography, music videos. I used to do all kinds of different stuff. I wouldn't recommend it to myself, like, now, looking back, but it was good because it helped me really figure out where I wanted to specialize. And that was primarily in post-production, in Photoshop, and later on in, software like Nuke and Fusion and whatnot. So some time had passed with living in this pool hall, kind of running the business out of this pool hall. Like, all of my early on freelance days were all out of here. I used to do a lot of album covers and mixtapes, and that's what really sparked my love for Photoshop and photo compositing, and eventually what really got me into photography, because I got tired of my, clients giving me cheaper, lower resolution photos than what I could have with a DSLR. And so at the time, I borrowed my buddy's, I believe it was an Olympus Evil 300, maybe at the time. I remember it being an 8 megapixel camera, and that's what I used. And that's where I started. I bought a cheap set of Cowboy Studio lights. I believe I still have the lights somewhere, and a green screen that I actually still have somewhere. And that's where kind of my photography all started. So at this point, I've got a base in 3D, I've got a base in photography, and a deep passion and love for Photoshop. So after the time of living in this pool hall for a while, my wife and I finally get an apartment. So it's just myself, my wife, our son. And so we're able to make all of this work, get an apartment, and no joke, I dealt with the biggest burnout shortly after we got the apartment. I quit doing graphics, I quit doing audio engineering, I quit doing, any type of music video work or, live action, post-production, any of that stuff. And then I just stopped and said, hey, look, I need to do something else. I decided to go to school, contacted Full Sail University. They got back to me quick, fast, and 2 weeks later, I was already enrolled for school, ready to start. I believe this was November of 2011, maybe. And so that kind of started. So here I am in school, wanting to learn compositing and visual effects, animation, something different than what I was dealing with previously. And so I went to school for, Full Sail's computer animation program with the plan of getting into school, using my self-taught knowledge to help propel me forward, and to get a job in the industry like set in stone, provide for my family, give them a better, just boom. I wanted to work in movies. That was what I initially went for. And everything went great. I loved it. I loved school. Busted my ass through school the entire way. I graduated valedictorian, advanced achiever, many other awards from school. I got set up for one of the studios that I really looked up to. So I already had buddies that were getting out, working at these places. And what many people don't know is that midway in my degree, my middle child was born. And so I kind of had to think all the way back to the days of not having a dad. And I'm like, man, look, a lot of my buddies that I knew were working in the industry already, and just talking to them and kind of deep diving what it's like, I decided that at the time, it wasn't for me. That's not the life that I wanted to, kind of put the family through, at the time. And so I decided not to get into the film industry like I had wanted to initially, and kind of adjust my plans and my goals. And so I didn't know exactly what those were, but I knew that I could still work in, say, like the product visualization and, still a 3D industry doing commercials and stuff, but I didn't have to work in motion picture. And that's actually currently where I'm still at today. So, it feels like it was forever ago, but it wasn't really that long ago. So, so today, a lot of people ask me, like, what do you do full time? I'm a full-time CGI team lead. At the date of this video, I work for a company called Think Chromatic. Awesome company. We do a lot of product renders and visualization. And I'm a CGI team lead there. And then I do my YouTube photography cosplay thing all on the side. Hopefully that gives a little bit of insight here. I'm kind of looking back through the questions a little bit. That's a rough backstory, and I know that it kind of goes through a bunch of rambling. I'm not really comfortable talking about this stuff. This isn't meant to be one of those like clean cut videos all the way through. It's a little bit more raw anyways. So what brought me to art? Initially it was interest. I used to sketch a lot as a kid. That passion, for whatever reasons, was sort of taken away, I'll say. I don't want to get into the details, but it was one of those things that after a few significant events in my childhood, I just no longer felt the same passion or drive to continue drawing that I used to have. And but what brought me to art, especially now, is the interest. I'm completely fascinated with being able to create virtual worlds for people, and that initial interest sparked a passion. The passion just led down to an awesome community. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question, what got me into art, and then kind of a backstory so you guys know what you're dealing with here. So yeah, we'll go on to the next question now. All right, moving along. Brian Bono, you ask, in the beginning, when this was all just a dream, how did you stay motivated through the hard times? How did you embrace the suck? So I like that you asked this question. So for you guys who don't know what the phrase embrace the suck means, it's a necessary hard time for a greater gain in the end. So that's what the suck is. And when this was a dream and how I stayed motivated through the hard times, it's kind of tough to really pinpoint it to stay motivated. My motivation was providing my family with a better life than what I had when I grew up. So, excuse me, I can't say that all of this that I have now and all of that was really the dream. The dream was to provide, ultimately, to provide for my family better than I had when I was a child. So I never met my father, and ever since I was a kid, I remember being able to close my eyes and see this vision of a guy who is just like a shadow figure that was sitting there. And I was always able to see that as a point of like, look, you're here. Like your kids know who you are. Your family knows who you are. It was always just to be better than that. And so for me, like I'm living my end game dream every day. And, you know, from the artistic standpoint, I just love what I do, so I continuously do it. It's hard to explain how I don't really need the motivation. What I've been focusing on lately is really the emphasis on breaks and balance, and taking some time off of that, whether it's to play a little bit of video games here and there, or take the kids on a bike ride, or get up, you know, to be able to cuddle with my wife and watch TV for a little bit. Things that normally I may put that time into my computer and Photoshop, I'm putting that time elsewhere. Yeah, I mean, hopefully that you know, I take adversity head on, dude. And I move in a way that doesn't allow me to back out. All right, guys, moving right along here. Robert H. Waters. What piece of art have you created that is the most important or valuable to you as an artist? Dude, I looked at that freaking question, and this was one of them that makes you really think. And I didn't have an answer for quite a while. So, my answer to this, hate it or love it, is my next one. I can't look back and maybe say, other than my very first commissioned pieces of work, because it was a very sink or swim moment for me in my life. If I were to pick one, those would be it. But my raw answer is really just my next piece of art is my most important. And that's, I really love progression. Like, progression is an amazing thing. Failure is an amazing thing. Practice is an amazing thing. Failing in Photoshop, failing at, you know, just not getting that look I wanted, and continuously striving for better, in the sense that there's always somebody better than I am. I never let myself get to a point to where I don't somehow get inspired by others. Being a digital artist working in 3D and photography, it gives me plenty to be inspired by. You know, I don't just get inspired by photographers, I get inspired by freaking digital sculptors and character artists, and inspired by some of the crazy, if you guys don't know who Beeple is, go check out Beeple on Instagram. I believe it's Beeple Crap on Instagram, but I get inspired by some of the crazy weird stuff that these 3D artists post on social. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't really get attached to the piece of work that I've created more than I get attached to the lesson that I learned while doing that piece of work. Yeah, so hopefully that answers your question. It's my next one. That's my most important. Moving along. James Beard, you ask, what is your creative process like? Do you start in camera, in 3D, Google, meditation? The people need to know. Well, James, people of the YouTube verse, it usually comes down to me going into 3D. I have my garage studio set up in 3D space inside of Cinema 4D, and I start pre-planning lighting. So I look at the reference that the client provided, and I start to put that all together and say, hey, look, this is what I need to do to mimic this lighting here in my studio. And these are the general light ratios that I need. So on the day of the shoot, I can alleviate a lot of testing time. Jesse Hansen, this would be a two-part question. When doing a style shoot, what is the thought process? Number two, what are your suggested assets to get when compositing? And lastly, you rock. Actually, Jesse, you rock, dude. So hopefully my last answer kind of covered this first question about the style shoots. I consider style shoots maybe more like trade shoots, which would be more premeditated. Like, I know what I want. Like, I want the Enchantress from the Suicide Squad. Like, I want to shoot that, and I want a good one. So realistically, knowing that I want that, if a cosplayer were to come to me and she does an amazing Enchantress cosplay, I'm like, look, I'll do it for free. You give me complete creative freedom to do whatever I want to do with this shoot. 3D effects, post effects, make it look extremely cinematic, whatever it is, that's what I want. I'll do it for free. So hopefully that answers that question. I mean, it's usually premeditated for those style shoots. Now, when it comes to the assets for compositing, so I've got stock packs that I sell. Shameless plug. There are packs that I actually use. So if you go to gumroad.com/Dustin Valkema, that's where I currently have everything. I'll leave a link in the description, maybe leave a card up here if you've unlocked that feature yet. But really, it's hard because when you're getting started, you just get the assets you need. So there's a lot of free sites, and free sites often come with their own headaches, and that usually has to do with already dealing with pre-processed photos. Even if you're still talking JPEGs, you're still dealing with files that have already had post-production on them, and it's just not the ideal way that I like to work. So for me, I shoot, my own fire, my own smoke. I've got some cool saber effects, my light leaks, different stuff that I use for the work that I do. So gumroad.com/Dustin Valkema, that's there. There are plenty of free asset sites you can go through. Just Google free, royalty-free images. One of my favorite places to go for locations, there's two of them, is Gumroad, just generally searching Gumroad, and photobash.com. Photobash.com is hands down one of my favorite places to go for assets. But then you've also got like ArtStation. We'll talk about this all in another video, but just quickly, you got ArtStation. Their marketplace is freaking phenomenal, completely amazing. If you guys are looking for, photo reference and like 3D assets, a banging place to shop. Neostock is also a really good place to find both like a background, like you can get some CGI backgrounds and stuff like that, and you can find like amazing stock models for your movie posters, covers, books, all that cool stuff. So yeah, really, man, it's whatever assets you need to get your job done. It's amazing. So go buy my stock packs. We'll leave that there. But yeah, go check out the other guys too, because they're pretty sweet. So there's that. Next, Peter Noob, you ask, any tricks you can give someone trying to improve their composite skill? Yes. Do it more. Practice harder, right? Like, really allow yourself to fail. Like, set objectives. So if there's pieces of work of mine that you like, that inspire you, recreate that. Work in objective-based scenarios, and get challenged often. So when I started this, and if you guys have watched this whole video all the way, then kudos to you. But back when I started doing all of this stuff, and in the midst of being homeless, you have a sense of hustle, like you have a sense of grind that's very different. It didn't matter what it was that I got requested, I needed that paycheck. So I would have to essentially promise things that I would have to provide. And I did not always know how I was going to do that. So early on, it taught me to research better. You know, the little bit that we had like YouTube operating in that way at the time, I would like have to research and look things up, look at better reference. I would have to kind of dissect, you know, an inspiring, you know, piece of work and figure out how that might be able to be done. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, I'm trying not to get on too much of a tangent here. All right, guys. So the final questions that we're going to address here very briefly, because I'm working on a video right now, gathering assets for a video right now that cover it all. It's all about 3D. How do you get started in 3D? Look, Blender. That's my short answer. I'm going to tell you, Google Blender, blender.org. Go download that software. It's free. It's an amazing piece of software. I don't personally use Blender. I use Cinema 4D and Octane Render and almost all of the work that you guys see. That's what I use professionally. I've never gotten to really learning Blender, but I wish I had. That's where I go. Start learning 3D, start getting into it, learn all of it. I'm not saying to master all of it, but when you want to dive into 3D, you want to know about the basics of modeling, texturing, lighting, dynamics, the basic stuff that can get you the results that you need. So at this point, we're gonna wrap up this QA, or this Q&A, not a quality assurance and check, but this is a question and answer time, guys. It's getting kind of late here on this side. I know that I rambled a lot, but hopefully it gives you guys a lot more kind of in-depth look at maybe who I am and the way that my brain functions, because it's crazy all over the place. So I appreciate those of you who have stuck around for this throughout the whole video. Yeah, guys, I'm looking forward to the next one. We'll probably do another Q&A about 5,000 subs. I think that'd be about a good distance here, and then I can get back to some regularly scheduled stuff, and we're gonna start diving into 3D. So little bits and pieces. I use Cinema 4D. You guys go start learning Blender. New video is gonna come out here fairly soon that's gonna be talking about all this. I'll see you guys in that one.